Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Purple access time, which means it's either Tyler Fornes or Chip Scoggins. And look, it's Chip Scoggins of the Star Tribune, along with yours truly, Judd Zolgan, and of course, Declan Goff. Purple access, Chip, let's get right to it. So much to talk about. Not really controversy, but certainly upheaval. Now, Mackey told me he saw you at the Wolves game last night and asked you about former Vol Josh Dobbs. Sounds like you weren't super high on Josh Dobbs. So what do you think?
No.
So Phil misrepresented you then.
Yeah.
He told us you were not that you weren't that high on Josh Dobbs. That's what he said.
No. Well, I mean, high on him in terms of like being your starting quarterback for the future.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay, so you're not that high on him for a quarterback.
Yeah. No, if you're a Tennessee Vols fan, you have great admiration for Josh Dobbs, for what he meant to our program. Great leader, obviously smart. We all know about the aerospace engineering, but just someone that you want to represent your program as the face of your program.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah,
talk about him as a quarterback.
Yeah, he's a winner.
He's a good guy. There's a lot of good guys out there.
He won for us. Very athletic. I mean, just the accuracy with passing. That's the one thing that people are going to look at. But I think he's probably a logical pickup for the Vikings, because here's a guy who's had to adjust to a number of systems throughout his career. He's been at how many different teams, super smart. So he's going to pick up things quick. You can put him in there and he's going to be able to make things happen with his feet. If not, if he doesn't know the offense great, if things break down, he's going to make things happen with his feet. He's going to be a good teammate, a good leader. So, I mean, I think all those things make sense for Kwesi to go out and identify him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's, I think there's limitations obviously with his passing. And but I was excited. Heck, anytime you get more balls up here, that's always a good thing, right?
Always need more Vols. Always can never have enough Vols. So you were there on Sunday when Kirk got hurt. You went to Kwesi's press conference that he held on Wednesday. Just give me your summary or your thoughts on the past 4 days in which upheaval has definitely hit a team that had just gotten on a roll and back to 4-4 by beating the Packers.
Yeah, it's funny, Judd. I was starting to write Sunday in the press box at Lambeau that what we're seeing is a play caller and quarterback completely in sync. The way Kirk was playing the last 2 weeks. I mean, he was to me, that shows up especially on third down. Mm-hmm. Like he had complete control on third down. Like he was staying in the pocket, he's making these throws. He just had complete control of the game. And then that happens. And we've been in a lot of weird post-game locker rooms. I've been in one after a tie there at Lambeau. We've been there after really bad losses in New Orleans and how those feel. This was one of the weirder ones I've ever been in because they just dominated the Packers and they won their third game in a row. But it was as somber and not quiet like sometimes you have after a really bad loss, but nobody was celebrating. And so it was a weird vibe. And I mean, people knew, you just knew.
Right.
You knew from O'Connell's tone and what was going to be the outcome of that. And then we were standing outside and they brought in that hallway there, Judd, outside the locker room, they brought in Cousins' wife into the locker room. I mean, you knew that it was going to be the worst case scenario for them. And then Kwesi yesterday, it was interesting. A couple things I thought were interesting. The fact that players were texting him, telling him, it's not saying don't break up the team, but saying how much they like this team and they think they can get on a roll. I don't know how much that played a part in his deliberation. I'd hope not much, because when you're the GM, you can't let players dictate those things. I did ask him about, because think about like that trade deadline came when you've saved your season, you've won 3 in a row, you're in the playoff, and now all of a sudden you lose Cousins. So I asked him, I was like, does that have to rise to the ownership level? Just like, because to me, there's like three options, right? It's like you either go really big and try to make a big splash trade, or you do what they did, or I never thought they were going to be like, sellers at that point. You're not going to trade Danielle Hunter when you're in the playoff race. But Kwesi said, yeah, he consults with them and told them like here's what he thinks about where they're at. And he said that he when they were 1-3 or 1-4, it didn't feel like a 1-4 team to him. It was he put more of that on turnovers versus them being a bad team, and kind of just the weird, the self-implosion that they had, which I don't necessarily disagree with that. Because other than Philadelphia, I mean, it wasn't like they were overmatched or anything. Even Philadelphia had turnovers that really hurt them. The Jefferson one. So it's been we've had some strange weeks in Vikings land together, and this one will go down as one too.
So what is your assessment now? Like, obviously, Jaren Hall, the rookie's going to get the start on Sunday against the Falcons. But what is for 4-4 with 7 playoff teams now, that bottom wild card is probably going to remain wide open for a while. But what's your assessment with the direction or where things are going to go?
Yeah,
I will say this. I am very excited to see what O'Connell does. Not that I think Hall or Dobbs is going to be great, but I want to see O'Connell call plays for a quarterback who can use his feet.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I mean, obviously, you're not going to be able to have the same thing that you have in for Cousins. I mean, just right. So how streamlined is it for Jaren Hall and being able to do bootlegs and some of those different things to get him on the move, to maybe make him feel comfortable, kind of what he does. I was impressed with Jaren Hall in terms of just, you can tell he's 25, like from his press conference. I mean, you could tell he's a mature guy and he's, at least from that part of it, like how he projects himself, he seems pretty calm and just mature. I don't know how this goes, because I think it's, as much as O'Connell, I guess he's talked to Jaren Hall about, like, don't make this game a referendum. This is not like
right.
Your career hinges on this game, which, I think, maybe that's too grandiose a statement, but I do think where they go from here after this hinges on this game. Because if he plays well, then you ride it out, right? You just keep going. If it's, an epic struggle, if Dobbs is caught up to speed, you go there. If everybody's healthy, is it Dobbs? Is it Nick Mullins? Or is it Jaren Hall?
I think it would be Mullins if everybody was healthy. But now that he's not there and they're going to have a mobile quarterback or two, I think it changes. Because, I don't think they make this trade if Mullins doesn't hurt his back in practice and subsequently get placed on IR. I think he's just starting. And they probably would have gone out and signed a guy behind him. But I don't think the Dobbs trade, or they might not have. But the point is, I don't think the Dobbs trade gets made if Mullins doesn't get hurt. And so that's where it becomes, but what if you install a system for like Hall and he struggles, but then Dobbs comes in and can run and can function it? Do you go back to Nick when he's set? And I also don't buy the fact that Nick is right around the corner of returning.
No. Well, with the back, how do we know? He's not practicing, right?
No.
I think, if it's, you don't want to be this thing, we're going with a hot hand, because that can change from week to week. So it's not like you're going to rotate 3 guys. Ideally, you find a guy and you stick with him and the other guy's back up. So I do think there is a lot riding on Jaren Hall that, if this is going to be his job, if it goes well Sunday, I think you stick with it. As smart as Dobbs is and as adaptable and flexible he is in terms of picking up systems, he's still only been here a week,
Yes.
So it's not like he's going to have mastery over this, because everybody talks about how hard this offense is to learn and be able to make checks at the line and all the things that they're asking him of it. I still think I'd rather have a guy who's been in the system for, months versus days, even if you're sacrificing something on the other end. But Yeah, so I think it probably depends on how Jaren looks on Sunday, and then you go from there. And yeah, I don't think you can with a back issue. I mean, we don't know if Mullins, if it's 1 week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. They can't.
Right. And they're not going
to say they had to make a move. They had to make a move. And this is to me again. This is a logical one because it's the guy who's shown that he can pick up things fast.
So here's the other thing that I find incredibly intriguing, and I think to the point of how you started your column before Kirk got hurt on Sunday, I think we all agree that the Cousins-O'Connell marriage worked out really well. Like it was expected to, and I think it might have exceeded expectations. But here's what's next. And yes, there's pressure on Hall. If Dobbs plays, yes, there's pressure on Dobbs. But there's also an interesting amount of pressure on O'Connell himself, because he's the one now who's going to have to go back into the lab and run his offense as efficiently as possible with a very different style. And in the case of Hall, a young QB. So to me, don't discount the pressure that's going to fall on O'Connell's lap, and he should welcome it. But to actually now come up with the best game plan and best alternatives and creativity that now suit, Jaren Hall or Josh Dobbs, as well as he did to try to suit Kirk Cousins, who is obviously a very different quarterback.
Yeah, and the reason why you think that, Judd, is because this is not a situation where you just throw up your hands. It's like, we're going to win 3 games this year. What the heck? Whatever happens. We're playing for draft position. They're in the playoff hunt, right? And they're still thinking playoffs. I guarantee you the ownership still views that as their mission, right? And you look at the way their defense is playing. You look at the way Addison has come on and being a star. You're going to get Jefferson back at some point. You've got some momentum now. You've turned this thing around. So it's not like you just say, well, whatever happens. No, they're still – and your schedule's soft. I don't know if it's ever soft, but it's softer. Yeah.
Until Cincinnati, you're right.
Yeah. And so – but I got a sense from listening to O'Connell that he sees the challenge that you just laid out. Like, okay, I have to find – the package of plays that he does well. It's not going to be the full thing, but a package of plays that allows it. Because he said something. Someone asked him yesterday, "How do you approach it?" He said, "First, we sit down and figure out what it will take for us to win this game, and then you work backwards. Like that's how not just offense, but like all the things. How we're going to win this game, and then you figure out your game plan accordingly." And so, I'm sure for him, it's not what he wants, but if you're a coach, this is what you're paid big money to do, is like deal with circumstances. And this is one of the toughest one you'll deal with when you lose your quarterback.
And the nice thing that he's got going for him now is his defense is actually solid. So like, that's a different storyline too. And so like, if you are to what you just talked about, working backwards, how do you win this game? The defense actually has been, I'm surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised. I expected that Flores's creativity would help. I don't know if I truly thought in my heart of hearts it would work this well, but Chipper, they are a fringe. They are just outside yardage-wise of being top 10.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's interesting. I sat down with Harrison Smith first day of training camp. He had his opening press conference, and we went outside and did a one-on-one, and he was talking about Brian Flores and why he came back. He said, I don't want to say any names, he said, but I just – we have some guys that people aren't talking about that I think are going to really pop in this defense. He said, I don't want to give it away in case it does. But I think Metellus, I think Cam Bynum, I think those two jump up to me as guys that have really flourished in this scheme. And you're just seeing – I was talking to Harrison about this in the locker room the other day after the game. It was like, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's because they're winning, but it seems like they're playing fast right now, the defense.
Yeah, I agree.
And he said guys
plays incredibly fast, Chip.
Yeah, he said guys know a lot faster than we saw last year, but it just seems like he said, I said, what is it? Guys know what they are, we're supposed to be. Flores putting you guys in position. He says it's all of it. He says confidence. It's like guys know their assignment. They know they're being put in a position to make plays, and you're just going and doing it. So I hope he sticks around for a couple years, Flores, because it'd be fun to see once they really get more personnel on that side, what he could turn that defense in. And you have to re-sign Daniil Hunter.
Well, now you
have to.
Well, you just hit on the key thing now too. Okay. So I'm with you. You were going to, if you had 2 wins right now, you might have traded him. But
sure,
you're 4-4. There's and Phil and I talked about this. There's no way that O'Connell could have gone into that meeting room on Wednesday and said, well, Kirk got hurt, and so we traded Hunter. Nice job. He convinced them that they could come back, and they did. And so, there was no way, there was no argument that you could make, well, we should trade him. But that being said, so of all the talk about, and look, O'Connell, I think, is being truthful. And I also think, to parrot what he said on Sunday, is we're going to support Kirk. So obviously when asked on Monday about Kirk, he was going to say, we want him back, because you're not going to say, well, that's it for Kirk. And Kwesi, I thought, was pretty truthful in saying it's going to be a negotiation. But Chipper, if you're doing, if you've got your legal pad right now and you're prioritizing, Danielle Hunter has shot way above Kirk. So Kirk's going to have to come back, in my opinion, on their terms, because I'm with you. Now it becomes, because he's not a young guy, but my God, he's playing great. He's 29. You've got to pay. You're going to have to pay him and Jefferson. And if Kirk says, I'll come back for cheap, that's awesome. But if Kirk's like, I need this guaranteed and that guaranteed, you're going to have to say, Kirk, we're sorry, but there are priorities above you. And that includes Danielle, who's been great. I'm with you on this.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those separate, because I don't know if I'd put anyone above a quarterback. Danielle, but you can't. I got to imagine the market's going to be big for him. So what? You have to, and this is where it's going to get tricky for his GM, because it can't be a 1-year deal like he did this past offseason with players.
Pay him.
Christian Darrisaw's price tag is going to be huge. Oh, by the way, you still got to do Jefferson. And Danielle, it can't be a 1-year deal. You got to sign him. The Cousins thing is interesting. I've gone back and forth. I started the year saying I thought it was more likely than not that he'll be back next year. When they started 1-4, I said, no way, you're moving on. Now, and I think in a weird way, and I could be wrong on this, but does the price tag come down for him because of this injury?
It's going to have to.
Across, not here, but just even as it goes out on the market. I think so. I think it will. Now, maybe there's one team out there that says, forget it. We think he's healthy. We've done the medicals. We're not concerned. Mm-hmm. That one's going to be fascinating to see what this injury does in terms of what he's able to get in terms of a contract. But Judd, the way he was playing, man, and I don't, maybe we're going to romanticize it because he's not here and you're going to see the big drop off from him to the next guy.
Right.
I'm not so certain that he won't be back next year.
Oh, I'm not either. And I do think I think what Kwesi said is the most honest thing, which is he can be back, but what it's going to be a negotiation said to me is he's going to have to sort of come back on our terms too. I'm just saying, as far as paying guys, I got to pay Jefferson. I feel that you have to. I'm with you. If you're going to keep Danielle, pay him. And so now Kirk, look, if we're talking about a top flight QB who's not hurt, then I'm with you. Then he takes precedence. But I think with Kirk, he needs to be, and for all I know, he might be now, he and his agent, Mike McCartney, need to be realistic about what they're going to get. And if they come back with, well, we need this guaranteed and we need a no trade clause and all that, I'd say, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Yeah. And the one thing we don't know, and they're obviously not going to reveal this, is how much is there an appetite to just be younger and at quarterback, to have a guy to start over with? They're never going to say that. I mean, and that's not, two things can be true. You can love Kirk Cousins, everything you do, but you might say we want to go this way and be younger. But the problem with that, Judd, is as many quarterbacks as I think there's going to be in the first round. You asked me last week, and I totally forgot JJ McCarthy at Michigan, and the whole staff. The night I covered the Michigan game with Gophers, Kwesi, his scout team, there was 5 of them there watching. Now, Michigan has a bunch of guys that they're going to watch, but I assume they're there watching the quarterback.
And they were stealing signs, so it didn't.
And they were stealing signs. Yeah, they're helping steal signs. I don't know that they're going to be, they're not going 4-13. I mean, they're probably going to be stuck in that middle again, right? 8-9 wins, I would bet. Even with the quarterback thing, they could get to 8 wins, 9 wins, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they
So
definitely could in this conference.
So where are you picking there? Where are you picking at that point?
And then the question is, do you want to try to trade up, or do you want to try and sign a guy? And look, if Kirk comes back on my terms, I'm taking him back. I'm not saying I'm not.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Judd. Do you want a rookie quarterback with Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson? Or do you want a veteran?
Well, okay, so you just hit on what I think is among the most intriguing things. Is I'm not saying that Dobbs, Jaren Hall, I'm not saying that they are the guy. My guess is that they're not the guy. But two things. One, what is O'Connell going to think when he sees that guy that can hit the edge, that can get around the edge? And by the way, free guys up. And by the way, improve a run game that's been atrocious. And that's not Kirk's fault, but he's a pocket passer. Yeah. You're all of a sudden, your run game should improve just by who your quarterback is. The second thing is, and this is again what we don't know. The second thing is do O'Connell and Kwesi say, Kirk Cousins saved our bacon. We are so fortunate to have him. Or do they say, this is why Kevin was hired? He's a quarterback whisperer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's the mad scientist who can turn the next guy. And like that, so that becomes another factor. Like what they say to us is so different than how they think. It's just really interesting.
Well, again, two things can be true. I think if you ask O'Connell, based on reports of who they liked in his previous draft, mobile, athletic, that I would bet that's the profile, because what coach doesn't, they want the mobile. So he probably covets that, but there's no denying he loves what he has with Cousins right now in terms of a guy who's so cerebral, could run that offense, who's playing at a high level. So there's probably a tug of war going on even within his mind of
okay,
100%. Like look what I have right here with Cousins. If we can just, I know what I'm getting. He's playing at a high level. I mean, you look at the last 2 weeks, Judd, is I think the best of his career, probably, right? Best since he played pretty well last year.
I was going to say,
the last 2 weeks felt different to me.
It's impressive.
Maybe I'm wrong. But the last 2 weeks it felt different to me.
Yep.
But when you factor in all these, I mean, again, you sure would hate to let Daniil walk because you don't have money. You got to pay Darius. You got to pay Jefferson. I mean, these things are adding up.
That's my point. And if Kevin O'Connell, and I think he's seen this way, is seen as a guy that can develop QBs, Chipper.
Yeah.
Don't you sort of have to be thinking, hey, if we draft a guy and you develop him, we've got 5, especially for first round pick, we got 5 years of team control. Now we can pay guys pretty damn well and not be hit with, oh my God, where's the next guy going to come from? So like, I don't think the answer is Kirk's gone for sure. And I don't think the answer is Kirk is back for sure. I think the answer lies within, because I will say I give O'Connell a ton of credit for Kirk. Kirk put up great stats at times from 2018 to 21. He was never this guy. Like O'Connell has brought out the best in him, both on the field and in my opinion off, because he's a different guy. Sure. And you occasionally heard guys from 2018 to 21 talk about Kirk and how much they like Kirk. It was never like this.
No.
This is a love affair, which good for Kirk, but that comes from what O'Connell has allowed him to become.
Yeah. I mean, that struck me like in the locker room Sunday at Lambeau was like, man, this is like deeply personal.
Yep.
It's not just like, oh my God, we lost a great player, lost our quarterback. It's like, these guys were, some of them had tears in their eyes, and it was, so I think he has become their leader, where I didn't feel like that early on first few years, but you're right. I want to go back to what you said about Kwesi. I think it's Seif that asked him, do you want him back as your quarterback? It's going to be a negotiation. And that was probably the smartest thing he could have said right there, because it's easy to get wrapped up in this, the emotion of him and all that and say, yes. But it is going to be a negotiation. There's going to be a price for it. And I'm fascinated to see what that looks like next offseason.
I agree. And I don't think that they know yet necessarily. And I also think, again, I think no matter how they do from Sunday through the rest of the season, I think it's going to be extremely intriguing to watch how their opinions might be swayed by what they see, not only from the guys who are playing QB, but again, just from what they can do, because the lack of mobility that already existed for a guy who's going to be 36 next summer and is now going to be coming off an Achilles is going to be have to be factored into the business decision of what do we need our guy to do. And I'm going to keep going back to this because I think this is one of the most interesting things, Chip, and that is the run game with a mobile QB, because this run game right now is unworkable.
We were talking about that with Dalton Reisner yesterday, and it's like, Dalvin was not going to solve this.
No.
What has happened? The fact that they just cannot run the ball. I mean, I want to see more Akers. I do. I just feel like he can
hit the hole a little bit better.
Yeah.
Alex has no burst, man. He's got a little burst, but he doesn't have that burst. Like, that's the one thing, in Cook's prime or Peterson, part of the problem is we got spoiled.
Yeah, probably.
We got really spoiled, but when you've got that guy that can put his foot in the ground and he's like a jet and he's gone, Alexander doesn't have that, and Akers is more slippery. But even I don't know if he's that guy. But if all of a sudden your quarterback is a threat to run, now it creates a lot of interesting opportunities that this team flat out in the first 8 weeks of the season has not had a chance to capitalize on.
Well, and I don't know. I assume, Hall has. I'm telling you, Dobbs has it. I mean, he can flat out run. I mean, he's elusive.
Hall can move, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was his game in college. Yep. But I just haven't seen him, like I've seen Dobbs. I'm going to tell you, Dobbs can run. I mean, he's very elusive. He can get out of trouble. He can, whether it's either scripted or unscripted, he's going to make plays with his feet. And that's the thing that's attractive to me about him is when it breaks down, it's not necessarily a sack. It could be a positive play for you, Right. So, and you're right. O'Connell's probably like, all right, we have something here. Let's see how we could use that and incorporate that into the game plan.
Last thing, are you as convinced as I am that the Green Bay Packers are in for an extended period of being terrible? I don't mean the 1 year in 2005, like when Favre was the QB of a bad team. I don't mean when like Brett Hundley had to start for Rodgers because he was hurt. That team to me reminded me of the Packers of my childhood, and that was 20 years of putrid football.
Yeah, Judd, you know how when we walk from the car at Lambeau, through the lots there, it's always kind of upbeat and festive and all that. It was not that Sunday. It is carried over to fan base. I mean, I think they see that where this thing's at, and I look at them as like, what do they do well? Like I was just watching, like there's not, Love he has a big arm, but I just. You don't want to write a guy off after however many games he's played, but I just don't see it, Judd. I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's the guy either. I could come back and be wrong about that as he gets more experience, but wasn't it the LaFleur after a game says this is, no newsflash, but we're a mess right now, and that's 100% true. I mean, they're not very good. They're just not.
And I don't think that they have the infrastructure now. This is where a board being in charge hurts you. And the other problem that I think is great news for Vikings fans is I think Mark Murphy, who's the president, thinks he knows football, and I think they're I think Goody's taken the fall for a lot of things, and like this could set up a snowball effect that they don't fix for a while, because it took 20 years before they finally decided. Bob Harlan, who was the president and a great guy and a great business guy, he hired Ron Wolf, and Ron Wolf's the guy who's like, we got to fix all this crap. The longer they don't fix that, the more that Vikings fans are going to take pleasure in watching this team, the Packers, not be good.
Do you think this head coach survives the season?
I think he survives the season, but I think he gets fired.
No, survive. Do you think he gets another season?
No,
I don't need.
And is Goody out then? But they're going to be fall guys. It's Murphy who's going to be the problem.
This feels like it's heading down a track of let's clean house and start over.
Mm-hmm.
which, there's no.
But can the board remove Murphy? Because he's the guy.
I don't.
That was the problem back in the day when like Bart Starr had control and he was a terrible coach, and I think he was GM as well. And the board was just bickering because you've got you've got thousands and thousands of people with a meaningless piece of paper, but then you've got the board, which is a decent size, and they're the decision makers, and they all fight when things go bad.
That's right. Yeah.
It's great.
I think that's what he said. It's a mess. Yeah. It's a mess. Yeah. I was surprised by how poor they were. I just didn't think they're just not very good.
No, they're not. All right, Chipper. Great stuff. We will talk to you in a couple weeks. Okay.
All right, brother. See you, man.
Thanks. Talk to you.